And I remember when it happened and I was going through it, I just kept saying to myself, there's a reason, there's a reason, there's a reason, you know? And I truly believe that we sometimes are given these lessons so that we can do something with it, right? If we don't pay attention to that information, then sort of what's the point, you know? Yeah. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I change my practice completely.
Hello, welcome back to the How to Take Care of Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Wolff-Casey, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, metabolic health specialist, Ayurvedic yoga therapist, and chef, and I'm your guide to empowerment through ancient wisdom and modern science. Today, I'm talking with Gail Grossman, yoga educator, author of Restorative Yoga for Life, and a true teacher of teachers. Gail's work blends restorative practice, intelligent assists, and seasonally aligned living so your nervous system and real life actually feel better. I'm extra excited because I'll be cooking for her October retreat in the Berkshires, which we'll talk about in this interview too. Before we jump in, a quick ask. Please follow the show on whatever platform you're listening to. Please tap subscribe. And if you can, take just a few moments to leave a rating and review. It helps us to reach more people who are ready to take health into their own hands. And if you want ongoing support, recipes, and tools, join my metabolic reset community at veronicawolffcasey.com/MRC. Again, veronicawolffcasey.com/MRC. It's not a diet, it's a reset designed for real life and the rest of your life. All right, let's get into it with Gail. Hello, Gail. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here.
How are you?
I'm great. I love this season. It's like one of my favorite seasons to be in, and we've had such a beautiful fall so far that it's just been filling me up. So it's great.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
with you. I love fall. It's the best.
Yeah. It's funny because it's a season where I feel like I can be really sad about the fact that summer is over, and yet at the same time, there's just an energy in the fall that I just love.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And I think there's something about the transition, right?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
So I've told our listeners a little bit about you, but I would love to hear how do you tell people about yourself? What do you tell people you do and about who you are?
So my favorite way to describe what I do is that I'm a yoga educator and a guide. And the reason I use both those terms is that I feel that it's a bigger responsibility when you say you're an educator than when you're just teaching. I feel like a lot of people teach a little bit by rote and less about making sure that people truly understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and all the background behind it. And so it's really important for me to make their experience as rich as possible. And so that's why I like to use the term educator. And then I use the term guide because when I'm teaching, sometimes I find, especially when I'm working one on one with people, I find that there's so much more that we end up addressing that I'm always recommending different things to people, whether it be a vitamin or, to go see this particular acupuncturist or whoever it may be that I think would help them on a healing journey. So I feel like I'm just sort of here as a conduit in many ways to pass on information to people, whether it be through yoga or anything related to life, because at the end of the day, it's all yoga anyway.
It so is, right? We're on the
Yeah,
mat to practice how to be off the mat.
exactly. Without a doubt.
And so, Gail, can you tell us, speaking of yoga, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into yoga? What drew you into it in the beginning?
So the interesting thing about that is that I was doing Pilates at the time, and I became very friendly with my Pilates instructor, and she had just started going to a yoga class, and she said I should come along with her one day. She said, "I really think you would love it." And she was right. I basically took that first class and I never looked back. And to the point where I ultimately gave up Pilates because I was doing so much yoga and yoga was serving me more. So, but she didn't take it personally. It was all good. She understood.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So that was how I originally got drawn to it. And the interesting thing about that is I had been a meditator since I was 10 years old. My father took me to learn transcendental meditation when I was 10 because I was having issues with my sleep. And he thought it might help me, and he was right. And so I went and I got a mantra and all of that stuff. And so I'd been meditating since I was 10, which certainly is a branch of yoga, but I wasn't doing anything physically in that realm. So when I discovered the physical aspect, I'd always like to use my body. When I was growing up, I liked to dance. I did all of that, like Jane Fonda and step aerobics and all that fun stuff. And and I was active. I was always active. And I guess it turns out I was also flexible because I think that was definitely one of the pieces that attracted me to yoga because I was capable of a lot of it. So, of course, you know, that didn't always serve me either. I learned later that being flexible isn't always your friend. And so that's been a journey. And of course, once I learned that, that was also more information to pass on to the people that I work with. So, yeah. So, yeah.
Amazing.
And when I first started teaching, I actually taught children's yoga. Yeah.
I
Um,
actually
I
read about that because you started teaching
yeah,
it around 2000, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, it was one of those things that there was really not a lot of kids yoga around. And I was actually a Kripalu and I'd seen the catalog. I was just there for like a regular R&R weekend. And I opened up the catalog as I often did because I wanted to see, oh, what other programs are there that I could come and do. And I saw that I just missed a children's yoga training program. And so I went on the website, it was Yoga Kids International, and I found when their next training was going to be, which just so happened to be in New York City. I lived on Long Island, so it was certainly easy enough for me to get there. My husband gave me his blessing in the sense that, like, I said, "Do you think I'm crazy that I want to teach kids yoga?" And he's like, "No, go for it," that sort of thing. So, and I never looked back, and that sort of led me to where I am now.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
Amazing. Now, I
yeah.
heard you say earlier that flexibility wasn't your friend, and I know I had read, I did some research on you, not in a creepy way, but I found out that you had a kind of an injury that actually shifted your practice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I had a herniated disc, with, when it was a herniated disc, and it came along, of course, with all that lovely sciatica, and I remember when it happened and I was going through it, I just kept saying to myself, "There's a reason, there's a reason, there's a reason," And I truly believe that we sometimes are given these lessons so that we can do something with it, right? If we don't pay attention to that information, then sort of what's the point? Yeah. So, yeah. So, but that doesn't mean that I change my practice completely. I was already teaching restorative yoga at that point, but I think sort of what I was doing in my personal practice at times wasn't serving me. So it was more about really going deep into stretches that really weren't in the proper place in my body, and really learning a little bit more about anatomy so that I could so to speak fix myself, which I did. So yeah.
Yeah, that I totally know what you're talking about. I had a teacher, I don't know if you know Scott Blossom. He is one of my
Yes, he's
teachers.
amazing.
He is. He was one of my teachers in Ayurveda school and one of our yoga teachers as well. And he would always say, don't pig out on the prana in the pose. Because you'd get in these poses and you're like, oh, it feels so good. And he's like, don't stay there
Mhm.
necessarily, because that's sometimes because you're so in that, like, I can stretch further. You start pigging out on that prana, and then it's like, oh
Mhm.
God, I've overeaten prana. Like, how is that
Yeah.
possible? And that's
Yeah.
when those injuries can come in.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Well, I'm
Yep.
super sorry
And
that happened to you, but it sounds like it was a blessing in a
thanks.
way,
Yeah, and my favorite saying to my students is just because you can doesn't mean you should.
right? And so
Right.
you've been teaching restorative yoga. Now it's been one of your niches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So restorative was one of those things. So my husband and I used to see an acupuncturist in New York City, and I definitely give him a lot of credit for sort of shifting my whole trajectory of my life because had a totally different career, and he really got me doing a lot of practices that just sort of made life a little bit more clear for me as to where my path should be. And one of my husband's prescriptions, so to speak, from him was to take a restorative yoga class. And I had done my teacher training and I had observed somebody teaching restorative, but it was in the realm of recovery for cancer patients. So that was the only class they were offering in restorative at the particular studio that I was going to. And so I only knew of it sort of in this like healing realm and not just like as a prescription for somebody who is burnt out. So I had a whole new appreciation for it and it definitely helped my husband tremendously. And at that point I knew that I had to do a restorative training. So then I went and studied with Judith Lasater, and so I was teaching restorative for quite a while. I actually had several years between my first training with her and my second training with her, but it was all good. It was just because I opened a yoga studio and I had a lot going on, so it was sort of hard to find the time. And then I had the opportunity to do my 300-hour with somebody who was a longtime assistant of Judith's, and so that was great. So it was like, Judith through osmosis. So it was extra special, and I got to then assist Judith for a bit, which was also wonderful. So it was um, it was great, and it became a niche of mine, and I used it a lot, especially working one-on-one with people. And then I ended up I had a student who was, the CFO of a publishing company who encouraged me to write a book on restorative yoga. And so for several years, I told him he was crazy, and he just kept pushing and pushing, and finally I succumbed, and then I wrote the book. And so it has definitely become a niche because that's, when you put that out there, people start to know you for that. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so just for our listeners, for our viewers, what does restorative really mean to you besides just props and the rest?
Well, I think what restorative really does is there's I have two sort of perspectives on it because I'm both a trained restorative teacher in sort of more the Iyengar tradition that Judith comes from. And then I'm also certified in Katonah yoga, which utilizes Taoist theory and sacred geometry. And so I teach both styles. And in restorative Judith style, it's very relaxing. It's very down regulating for your nervous system. It puts you in shapes that your body then starts to feel a shift. Each shape is, based on traditional yoga, such as a back bend or a forward bend or a twist or an inversion, that sort of thing. And you most definitely feel as if you've taken a nap when you do that style. Your whole nervous system feels restored. When I teach a Katonah style restorative, it's more about reformation. It's about not letting you do what you do. It's about kind of showing you the position that your body really needs to be in to change your alchemy.
Like an
Yeah.
antidote.
Yes. I often will say to people, in many ways, it reminds me of homeopathy. It's like to like, and it's like you, how do I want to describe it? It's setting up the conditions for you so that, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say an antidote. That would probably be the best way. I It's a chemical shift. Not that you don't have the chemical shift in a traditional restorative, but it's a different kind of chemical shift because it's really looking at the elements, right? The way you would in Ayurveda or in traditional Chinese theory. And it's really looking at how to utilize elements to change the alchemy, right? It's like a formula. It's like anything. It's like you cooking your Ayurvedic deliciousness. Um, you're really looking at, okay, what is the season? What do we need to do for this season? What are the things that we need to put in our body that are going to help serve us best? I do the same thing in restorative. Right? It's like, okay, well, here we are. We're in fall. Okay. So, well, officially in a few days, we're in fall. And so we will basically be looking at, well, what are the organs of the fall? Right. And how do we support those organs? Right. So, and then each season is kind of looked at as, well, if we take care of ourselves in this season, then we're going to be good in the next season. So each season it kind of builds.
So it's basically Ayurveda.
Yeah. Well, I say I love both Ayurveda and traditional Chinese theory. And as I mentioned, my acupuncturist played a very big part in my life, and I learned a lot from him. And so there was a book that he had recommended many, many years ago called Staying Healthy with the Seasons. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I haven't read
It's
it. I think I've heard of it,
wonderful,
but I haven't read it.
but it has recipes and it has different seasonal things you do for yourself, cleanses or you name it, and talks about even body practices and he drew from both Ayurveda and Chinese theory.
Well, and it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. There's that constant debate of
Mhm.
which one was first, Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, and how different are they really? They're really not.
They're not.
Like people like Claudia Welch and Scott Blossom, they're both TCM doctors and Ayurvedic doctors. So it's like an interesting thing that
Mhm.
that so many of them have decided like, oh, they have to go together because it's the same thing, right?
Mhm.
It's so
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I love it because I can weave it into my classes and really, again, guide people and teach people what they need to know to stay healthy. So,
It's amazing. And do
yeah.
you feel so keeping all of that in mind, knowing what we know, do you think that people underestimate the power of restorative yoga?
Oh, 100%. And the interesting thing about restorative yoga in general that I have found, I feel like the last couple of years, it's gaining in popularity. I think part and parcel to this culture of saying that we're allowed to rest, right? And that wasn't a thing even, 25 years ago when I first started teaching. And, people were like, what do you mean? I need to get something out of this. I don't, and I actually recently was thinking, well, how else could one reframe this? And part of me was thinking, maybe I could call it productive rest, right? Or productive pause, or, because it is productive. You are doing something, right? You just don't feel like you're doing something. And maybe you're not sweating. However, it is incredibly beneficial. And I think more and more people are realizing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would opine that restorative yoga for the busy people is actually harder to do
Mm.
than an
Oh
active
my
class,
goodness.
right? Because
Well, again, you're saying antidote, right? So it's like, okay, type A personality, right? Or in Ayurveda, we would say Pitta, right? Like the Pittas 100% need restorative yoga, but it's the last thing they want. So, and look, I'm Pitta Kapha, so I could go both ways, and I'm definitely Judith Lasater always likes to say that she's a recovering type A personality. And I definitely related to that when she said that because I certainly was. And definitely in my previous careers, I was not that I'm not driven in what I do now, but things shift in terms of the way you put yourself out there energetically, um, knowing to really guard your own energy, especially when you're teaching, right? So, but yeah, I definitely needed a little bit of this science to help me to really learn to get quieter and be able to relax. So, mhm.
and this is a
And I
great
always tell people, yeah, I
go
always
ahead.
tell people it's the hardest class you're going to take, especially the first time. Yeah.
Exactly, and then they become addicted, and then they're like, "The best sleep of my life I have every whatever." Like, I teach restorative on Monday nights, and so all my students are like, "That's the night I sleep the best." It's like, "Yeah,
Hmm.
of course you do. You finally, like, shut everything down." So
Yes. And you
interesting.
really set the conditions so that you can sleep well because your nervous system has sort of, downregulated. So your mind isn't racing and you're not ruminating about stuff. Yeah, it makes a big difference
So
for
I heard you
sure.
say that this is how you learn to start taking care of those parts of yourself, which is a fabulous segue with all that you do, the teaching, the writing, leading retreats, doing random podcast interviews. How do you take care of yourself? What are your non-negotiables?
Well, I recently, I mean, besides doing yoga, okay, because that's a given. So, yoga, journaling, meditating, breath work, those are things that I do non-negotiable for sure. But I've recently added doing strength training to my routine, especially because I'm over 50 and I know that I need to do a little bit more weight bearing. Although my technician at my bone density test every time is like, you've got great bone density and it must be that yoga. But at the same time, muscles are a separate thing. And I'm doing the muscles really for, my own metabolism and the way my skin feels on my body. So that's important. So I do that a couple times a week and I do infrared sauna, which I swear by, and also cold plunging. So those are important to me. Plus, I really try to eat well, and I've always watched what I eat, but I've kind of shifted in terms of really looking at fats, protein, carbohydrate, finding the right balance, really looking at macros a little bit more. And whether or not that's serving me with my weight, I don't know. I sometimes it's fine, but energetically, I feel good. So I don't feel like I need coffee at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and or anything, caffeinated for that matter, or sugar, or I don't have a slump, and so I know that I'm probably nourishing myself well. Yeah. I also, non-negotiables, I see an acupuncturist twice a month. I get a massage once a month. Those are all things that I do to take care of myself.
Those are
Yeah.
all really solid things, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we have to figure out what works for us, and I can't say enough about body work and acupuncture and correct diet and all of that. It's just such a beautiful way to keep these, human machines running.
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
now, shifting gears just a tiny bit. So if someone was just starting to take care of themselves, maybe even dipping a toe into yoga, what would you
Mhm.
want them to know?
Well, I always say to people, you don't have to bite off more than you can chew. I think a lot of people get really overwhelmed and think they have to go all in. And I really feel that, one day a week is a great beginning. One class is a great way to start. And, that might be it for you for the week. And you might do that for a while. And then maybe you're going to be like, no, I think I need to do this more. This is really changing how I feel. And I want to have more of this experience. But, that'll be up to you because it's like even with meditating, somebody wants to meditate and they're like, well, I don't have 20 minutes to meditate. I was like, do you have 5? You know, you don't have to put these barriers in front of yourself that makes it not possible, right? Just tiny little baby steps, and that's really how it begins. That's how the habit begins, and then you want more. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I think people fall into the trap of perfectionism. They're like, well, if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all.
Oh, I was that way when I started teaching my online classes, and I was like, "Oh, I don't have the perfect backdrop, and this isn't," and one of my students is like, "Just do it." And so I just do it, and you know what? Sometimes it's not perfect, and the backdrop doesn't look how I want it to look, but I'm still there teaching, and it's all good, and people keep coming back, so
And
it's
people keep
okay.
coming back. Exactly. Well, true
Exactly.
story. I once taught a yoga class on my bed because the rest of the house was occupied, and the room I was in, there was no floor space. There was only the bed. So I taught yoga
My
on
gosh.
my bed. Well, yeah. And
I
they were
love it.
laughing, but they got a good class. We all just had to adapt. And that's the yoga too. Can you do
Mhm,
yoga in the most random place? Is if
mhm.
that's the time you have, like in an airport terminal. Totally did that on my last time I went to India. There was a free terminal. I went and did yoga. I'm sure I had an audience. I
Yeah,
don't care.
right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly, yeah, when I've worked with people one-on-one, sometimes I have students who can't even get down to the floor. So we would make makeshift, benches and whatever we could do so they didn't have to do that. So, yes, doing bed yoga is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Why not?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Gail, I know there's stuff going on right now, and I'd love to know what's lighting you up in your work right now. Like what is the spark that's got you most excited?
Well, probably a couple things. I just started teaching at a new yoga studio in Great Barrington. I split my time between New York and the Berkshires. And so recently a new studio called Better Yoga just opened, and I was invited to teach restorative there. So I've been doing that on Saturdays, and I really love it. It's nice to have a class on a schedule in person because I've been teaching online for so many years, just, flat, right? So it's nice to have actual people. I also am teaching on Long Island, but I do that twice a month. So, although I'm contemplating doing it more. So, because now I really just feel like we're a little bit more solid with where we're at in person classes and stuff like that since COVID. So I know it sounds like so far away, but it took us I think a little while to get back into the groove of in person stuff. And um I've had the opportunity the last couple of years to teach at the Berkshire Yoga Festival, which has been great. And I love that because I get to meet so many new people and wonderful, people who are there and both teachers and students. And that is always exciting to just be filled up from other people's energy. And then I have a retreat coming up in October, which of course you know about because you will be providing our sustenance and incredible information about Ayurveda. And that's October 17th to 19th. And it's in the Berkshires, but the New York part of the Berkshires. So we're returning to a farm that we were at last year, and I just love gathering with people and having that experience. It just is that lights me up big time.
It's amazing, and I was just
Mm,
looking over the schedule again before we got on the call, and the schedule just looks so I'm a little upset that I can't be a part of it as a retreatant participant because I'll be doing the cooking, but I'll tell you, like, the people who are coming to that retreat, that is going to be an incredibly nourishing mind, body, spirit event.
mm,
It
yeah,
really is. You
yeah.
can tell.
I think it's important always when you're putting something like this together that you really are looking at it from every angle of how people can bring it back into their lives too. So it shouldn't just be experiential there and then they can't bring it home. So I think it's very important to create opportunity for learning where people can then look look back and have that information and utilize that information for their well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's so great, right? Because too often, and I know you've had this experience too, you go to some retreat and it's lovely while you're there. And then as soon as you leave on the car ride home, it all starts to fade away. And then you get home and you're just back in your life and you're like, ugh, like it's all back to normal. Like I'd be like, I hate it here. Like, I want to go back to the retreat. But it sounds like you've really formulated this so that when people leave, they're taking the experience, the knowledge, the educational aspects with them in order to use that toolbox in their real life.
Yes. Yes. It's very important for me for them to have that.
Amazing.
Mm.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
at the end of every interview, I ask two questions. One is from the Delve deck, which are conversational cards, and I just pick one at random. And they're just little ways for us to get to know each other better. And okay. So this is what does everyone but you seem to love? What's something that everybody loves, but you're like, mm-mm.
Well, that's a hard one. I love so many things. I mean, it's really true. It's hard for me to think of something I don't like except halva.
There you go. There's a thing. I
You would
love
think I
halva.
would. I happen to like sesame seeds, but I don't like it in that iteration because it's chalky. Like
It's
the
chalky.
texture just
It's
doesn't work for me. Yeah.
exactly. It's got that weird texture, and if you're
Mhm.
not into it, it could be a real bummer. It's kind of like
Yeah.
almost it's got the texture, and this is the only way I can describe it of how styrofoam feels,
Mm. Right.
right?
Yeah. It's true.
And that's a great segue to the second question, strangely enough, which is what are you learning or what have you learned from the food that you eat? other than that you don't like halva?
Mm, what have I learned from the food that I eat? I have learned that food is energy and that food is medicine. And those to me are really important. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much. How can our audience connect with you online? Connect with your
I
work?
am on Instagram as Yoga Mom, and I have a website as well. It's gailgrossman.yoga. You would think that I had gailgrossmanyoga.com, but it got stolen from some Chinese website a couple years ago. So I had to pivot. And so now I am just gailgrossman.yoga.
Which is kind of amazing though. gailgrossman.yoga, it's perfect and very memorable. And we'll
Hmm.
link to all of that and the retreat in the show notes. And
Awesome.
yeah, thank you so much. I know listeners are going to take away both inspiration and practical wisdom from this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here and to
Thank you.
spend some time with you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
My pleasure.
Gail, thank you for such a grounding, wisdom packed conversation. Friends, if you want to connect with her work, you can find Gail on Instagram at yogamom and at gailgrossman.yoga. We'll link everything in the show notes, as I mentioned earlier, including details for her October retreat in the Berkshires that I'll be cooking for. Now, if this episode resonated, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with a friend who needs permission to rest and recover. For deeper support, weekly check ins, education, seasonal recipes, and nervous system tools, come join us inside the Metabolic Reset community at veronicawolffcasey.com/MRC. Thank you for listening and doing this work to take care of yourself, one nourishing choice at a time. And in case no one's told you yet today, I love you, and I'm convinced of your capacity to continue crafting a life worth living. I'll see you next time. Take care, friends. Bye.